Good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Rick Knabb, director here at the National Hurricane Center in Miami, Florida, talking to you live via Periscope to give you the latest on Hurricane Matthew that intensified overnight. Maximum winds now at 105 miles per hour. You can see on the visible imagery this morning, centered over the south central Caribbean Sea. One thing that we do here at the National Hurricane Center is we are the regional specialized meteorological center internationally recognized by the World Meteorological Organization. So we are talking forecaster to forecaster with a number of the meteorological services throughout the Caribbean, and we'll be continuing to communicate with them as they decide on what watches and warnings they are going to issue for their countries, and we provide some guidance to them for that. Also flying the aircraft, the Air Force, the NOAA P3 Hurricane Hunter is going to be flying in and out of Matthew for days to come. And we also flew the NOAA G4 jet around Matthew last night, getting those data into the computer forecast models. So we are doing everything we usually do, and we've got a significant hurricane out there. And with it being in the Caribbean, we do know that many land areas are at least threatened by this system over the next several days to come. Now, one other thing you might not know about the National Hurricane Center is that we are co-located in the same facility with the National Weather Service local forecast office for the Miami, South Florida area. The meteorologist in charge of that office is Dr. Pablo Santos, and I'll ask Pablo to come on and join me in here. Pablo and I go back a long way, been collaborating for many years, and it is really valuable to have a local forecast office on site with us, and when we have a local South Florida threat, we are collaborating very closely. So one thing that all of our forecast offices and the Weather Service do for hurricane threats to the U.S. is communicate with local partners. So Pablo, who are you talking to, and what are you hearing from them, and how do you think the weekend is going to go with your communications?
Well, we are communicating with our local emergency managers. We are briefing them daily, and we will continue to do so over the weekend. And at this point, what we're just telling folks is that we have the concern for a hurricane somewhere across the region early to the middle part of next week. This is not the time to panic, of course. Life goes on. The weekend is coming over, and just make sure that you stay informed, because we do have that concern as we head into next week. That's all we know at this point. What is it that we do not know? Well, specifically, what, if any, impacts we're going to be experiencing across South Florida. But certainly, the threat is there, the concern is there, and everybody needs to stay informed.
Yeah, and from this very room, right where I'm standing, we were on television this morning talking to a number of local and national media outlets, and one of the things I kept saying, we talked about this, is that we have the luxury of time here in South Florida. Yes. Today, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Matthew's still going to be down in the Caribbean. So things that you might not have done before hurricane season started that you still could do this weekend, let's do them. Get your supplies.
This is the time, this is the time to check your plan. There is no better time than now. If you haven't done it, this is the time to do it. The one thing that is looking increasingly likely across South Florida is the concern for marine impacts. So certainly the Atlantic water off of the southeast Florida coast, we're looking at hazardous marine conditions beginning sometime early to middle of next week and continuing on through the week. So those with boating interest, this is something next week is not a week that you definitely want to be venturing out to the Atlantic water. So as far as impacts, that's the one impact of marine hazardous weather conditions that we certainly need to be concerned for next week at the very least.
And of course, we cannot rule out a direct hurricane impact in Florida next week. Let's talk about the meteorology and some of the products that we send out from the Hurricane Center, then you can dive down, talk about some of the local level. Let's first talk about the forecast cone that we have up here. This is the latest advisory from us here at the National Hurricane Center, and you see the general sense of this is it's going to be slowly moving through the Caribbean all the way into Sunday and Monday. The question is, day 4, day 5, where does it exit the Caribbean when the models that we rely upon, some of them are left of us and some of them are right of us, some are slower, some are faster. So what's the upshot, Pablo, for what people in South Florida have the potential for experiencing?
Well, at this point, this is what we were talking about early. This is what this graphic tells us is there is a 2/3 chance that the center of the hurricane will track anywhere within that region, which that means there is a 1/3 chance that it could end up tracking outside the cone. And you can see the cone is broaching the southeast Florida coast. So definitely there is a threat, there is a concern as we head into the early middle part of next week, and folks really need to stay informed as the weekend, as we move across the weekend and see what next week brings us.
And because those models are so widely varying in what they're forecasting, I've been telling folks that during the weekend, you don't want to tune out because the forecast could change significantly one way or the other. Come Monday, we might have a very different forecast than what you see here.
Yeah, that is a good point. At this point, look, at this point, if this forecast were to be perfect, right, we don't have much concern for wind, even flooding rains, or anything like that across the mainland. But like Rick was saying, if this track ends up trending further to the left and we end up with a more direct impact, that outlook will completely change. And that's something that we will keep you abreast as the weekend comes across, and we will keep updating our local homepage, weather.gov/Miami, and we will be addressing those impacts, timing. But again, right now we don't know specifics of that. But as time gets close, as we get closer in time to the system moving across the region, we will know more, and as we do, we will provide that detailed information to the public.
And since Pablo and I both live here in South Florida, all of our staffs do, we live this problem, and so that's what we're going to do this weekend. In addition to briefing our partners and keeping operations going, we're going to check our supplies. We urge folks to find out if you live in an evacuation zone. If that ever becomes necessary for local officials that Pablo talks to call for evacuations, you'll know where you're going to go, how you're going to get there. Do those things now so you're not doing them at the last minute if things change.
Absolutely. I mean, stay informed and take plans to be ready should the time come to take action.
So we'll continue to update you over the next several days as we deal with Hurricane Matthew. That's it here from the National Hurricane Center and the local forecast office for South Florida.